Those who have known me for the past 18 years will know that I started out in mobile computing as a somewhat self-professed expert in Psion palm tops. I ran and still run the only Psion shareware library day to day. I still get the odd order every now and then. What I thought you might be interested in is a closer look at some of the mobile hardware which was the oldest ancestor of today's Symbian smartphones. This is the Psion 3MX. There was a 3A and 3 and 3C before it. The 3A launched in 1993. It was the first really sophisticated palm top running Psion's Cybo operating system, itself modelled on VMS, the mini-computer multitasking operating system of its time. The screen was large, the keyboard was full and tilted up using this rather clever hinge. A full office suite really made the 3A and the 3C and the 3MX. They're all way ahead of their time, really. And here's what's effectively the Psion Series 3A Mini, the Sienna, now quite rare and rather cute. Rather a small screen, but still a full-width keyboard. It folds up in a rather unique way. Just as these devices started to be hooked up to dial-up and infrared modems running at a heady speed of 9.6 kilobits per second, the archetypal Psion Series 5 was launched, followed by the 5MX in here, with more memory and a faster processor. A stunningly usable full key action keyboard, extended using this patented mechanism. That was the real highlight, but there was also a massive 6-inch touchscreen as well, plus all the office and multitasking goodness from the Series 3 days. Amazing! The Series 5 ran Epoch, a bottom-up rewrite of Cybo that served as the first foundation for Symbian OS. Here's a smaller, slimmer variant, the Revo, albeit with lesser features and a far less usable keyboard and a smaller screen. And here's the elephant in the room. This is the rather heavy, the enterprise-focused Psion Netbook, also produced in less sophisticated form as the Psion Series 7 for general consumers. Huge colour touchscreen, appalling in sunlight, you can't even tell if it's on or not. A keyboard that still stands up today, they're really, really nice. A rechargeable battery inside, PC card slot on the side, and custom bootable. You just don't want to know what this baby cost in 1999, really. Booting any of these up in 2010, the biggest catch, aside from the obvious lack of telephony, is the screen tech used. The Series 3 was fine in bright light, but suffered in indifferent light, while the Series 5 here was pretty indistinct in most conditions, thanks to the resistive touchscreen. Sound familiar, anyone? And yes, the Series 7 Netbook was super in the gloom, but unusable in bright light or outdoors. So pretty similar to today's OLED and TFT screens then. Psion then got shafted by Motorola, who I've only just forgiven, and got cold feet about the move into smartphones, pulling out of the business altogether, but not before Epoch was well and truly under the helm of the new Symbian consortium. And the same software as in this Psion Revo, for example, is essentially what's inside the Nokia 9210 communicator and the Nokia 9500. And the guts of Epoch is what was at the heart of the UIQ-powered touchscreen phones from Sony Ericsson and the Series 60 one-handed phones that evolved into today's sophisticated Symbian smartphones. Perhaps at the code level there's not a lot left from that early Cybo or Epoch operating system compared to the upcoming Symbian 3, for example, but the ancestry is both easy to trace and, to me at least, pretty interesting. There's been a trend over the last few years for manufacturers to stick a 5 megapixel camera into a smartphone and say, there, you can now take great photos. Unfortunately, as many of you who have bought, for example, a Google Nexus 1 or Nokia X6 here, will know all cameras are very definitely not equal. From the physical size of the lens to the size of the sensor inside, to the quality of the lens, to the protection, or lack of it here, on the outside camera glass, to the software algorithms used, there is just so much more to a smartphone camera than a raw megapixel count. Just compare shots from, say, the Nokia N95 from 2007, 3 years ago, and the brand new HTC Desire from 2010, and you'll see a huge difference in most light conditions and not necessarily the right way around. When the lighting gets tough, either too bright or too dim, the smaller camera with the cheaper optics produces far worse results. I repeat, don't go by megapixel ratings, but let's say you've already bought something like a Nokia X6 or 5800 or a Google Nexus 1 or HTC Legend, something with a camera that's very definitely not in the top bracket. What can you do to get better results? Firstly, be more aware of light. Too much light, full-on sun, isn't good, as your smartphone camera sensor won't be able to cope well with the brighter spots in the image. Too little, evening or indoors, there won't be enough to avoid digital noise creeping into your photos. And in between, there are bright, cloudy and sunny but hazy days where your 5 megapixel camera can get close to that in the better Nokias, for example. Try to snap away from this light window though, and you'll be disappointed. Secondly, keep your hand steady for longer than you think you need to. When you press that shutter button or tap that screen, especially when light levels aren't ideal, the sensor can be exposed for a significant fraction of a second, and the steadier you can keep the phone during this period, the better. If possible, try to brace yourself against something solid and hold the phone in 2 hands like this, so it's line up, focus, squeeze the shutter, hear the sound, and count 1 second before moving. Thirdly, if you're trying to capture something fast-moving, a child or animal perhaps, then exact focusing may not be possible. Instead, if your phone allows this, focus on something at roughly the right distance, and then maintain that focus while you wait for the right moment on your chosen subject, and then snap. Going back to light though, don't be under any illusions as to what happens when you've not got decent natural light. The tiny lens and sensor plus the weedy LED flash in your phone will produce disappointing results indoors and in the evening. And don't even try to snap moving objects indoors and in the evening, perhaps someone dancing. The result will be a horrible blurred mess every single time. Quite aside from the graininess and digital noise already mentioned, the problem is that the electronic shutter has to be open for a few tenths of a second, in which time your subjects will have moved slightly. So your subjects are either a bit blurred or very blurred. I even see this to some degree with my camera favourite, the Nokia N86 that's shooting this video. The solution is to use xenon flash here on the Nokia N82, a rant I keep coming back to with good reason. Just look at the difference. The trouble is there aren't many phones, and certainly not many smartphones, with xenon flash currently. The Nokia N82, 2 years old now at least, remains the best in terms of photos, but it's old and chunky by 2010 standards. The modern Sony Ericsson Satio look promising, but its software isn't spectacular, and my review unit, xenon flash, wasn't a patch on the N82s. So you're stuck for now, although we can eye up the Nokia N8 in a few months' time, of course. Except that I'd suggest that if you go out a lot in the evening and don't want to lug a standalone camera around as well as your phone or smartphone, you might like to get a second-hand Nokia N82 or even the cheaper and tiny 6220C, both of which you should be able to find on eBay for £100 or so, and then stick your SIM card in that for the night, ready for stellar xenon photography. Then swap your SIM card back to your main smartphone for normal use the next day. Who says you have to keep your SIM in just the one device?